everybody. I'm Candice.
And I'm Chris,
And this is Candid Conversations on Leadership,
where we keep it real while diving into topics on leadership that are relevant to you.
Today, I want us to focus on self-care and how we take care of ourselves as leaders.
That's a great topic, Candice. It's something that's so important to all of us. And sometimes we forget to do that, right?
Yeah, sometimes we don't prioritize taking care of ourselves. We just go day to day all the time, and we never really think about, let's spend some more time on me.
What can happen if you don't take care of yourself?
You can be extremely stressed. You can burn out. It can start to affect yourself physically, not just mentally, but your body can kind of give up on itself. And so that's why I want to really dive into the topic of how do we take care of ourselves.
And are there special things as leaders, as people that are leading teams that we need to pay attention to that's maybe a little different than the average person?
I do think so, but I think that a lot of this can apply to anyone. So I think you don't have to necessarily be at a top leadership position to do these. These are something for everyone.
Okay, so what's one of your first things that you pay attention to?
When I think about self-care and I think about really stress recognition and stress management, I think about my handy dandy mnemonic device. So
I love mnemonic devices. Yeah.
Awesome. So the mnemonic device that I use is DERPAT. Now, before anybody in the comments or before you give me that look again, yes, I do know that DERPAT could spell an actual word. These letters, DERPAT, could spell depart, could spell other things, but DERPAT is what
I love it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we're going to go with that. And so DERPAT stands for diet, exercise, relax, people, attitude, and time. So DERPAT is how I try to do self-care. So diet, just making sure you put the right things inside of your body. Exercise is one that I spend a lot of time on. Now, I love Taekwondo. I talked about this previously, but 3 or 4 days a week, you can find me outside or in a gym facility, counting in Korean, doing push-ups, kicking, punching, all of that brings me joy. And so I love to do.
Where do you find the time to do that?
After work. So it's generally after work. On the weekends, I have time. I build it into my schedule. It is not nice to do. It's something that it becomes a part of me. It becomes a part of me. Like I mentioned before, I have not 2 full lungs. I have 1. And so Taekwondo kind of fills up that other piece.
Nice. And scheduling self-care, that's pretty intentional.
Yes, definitely. You have to be intentional with that. But other than DE, we've got really the R, which is relax. And now, of course, I can say, get 8 hours of sleep or do all these other things. But for me, the relax is really where I find recreation. I'm able to do some of those things that I enjoy so much that bring me joy, whether it be singing on the internet with random strangers, whether it is learning a new language, which I've been doing, vacationing, being able to travel across the country. All of those things are how I relax. And so that first part of the DR of DERPAT is the first part of my self-care.
Yeah, I think that it's interesting how you describe relaxation. I think my wife would describe you in the same way that she describes me, where she's like, you don't actually relax very well. But I do, right? I don't sit around and do nothing very well. It drives me kind of bonkers to do that. And it sounds like you're in the same boat where relaxation involves activity for you.
Mm-hmm. It does, definitely. When I think about the second half of DERPAT, it's really people. So the people that I spend my time with, I intentionally want them to be energizing me, because that's how I know that I'm really at the top of my game. If they're detracting or they're de-energizing or they're sucking the life out of me, I spend less time around those people, because that is self-care to myself. So if I can minimize the time with those people,
so it's the right people.
Yes, definitely. When I think about the A in DERPAT, it's the attitude. I have already said this multiple times to you, and probably people have heard it if they know me, but I like to keep positive attitudes and try to throw that out there. And so it's not that I'm avoiding the negative, but I'm trying to be more intentional about focusing on some of the positive. So being optimistic.
Do you sometimes get called a Pollyanna?
No, cheerleader more than often than a Pollyanna, but being able to think optimistically, but behave realistically is a very important lesson that I've learned. You can be positive, but still have some real guidelines there. And the last part of DERPAT is time. So it's time management. It's being able to, similar to being able to determine what to do with your time. That's how I manage.
Oh, any tips and tricks on the time management?
Yeah, so there's lots of tips and tricks, but I will say there's like prime time. I know when I operate best. So I might be a night owl, unlike other people who are early risers. So I like to do a lot of my work in the evenings when I got that energy working with me. Now, I know that several people I work with are not night owls. So I would not be sending emails in the middle of the night, but because I'm in technology, I can just schedule them to send when they're at their prime time.
Yeah.
So I can get all the work done and then send the notification that happened at 8:30 or 9 o'clock so that they're not getting awakened in the middle of the night because I was busy typing away. But I also can try to schedule some things when I operate best. So I think about when my work schedule or my prime time doesn't align with others, instead of scheduling something at 8 o'clock in the morning, even though I'm up, I may not be thinking and processing at the right speed. So maybe moving that meeting to 10 o'clock so that I can contribute in a different manner is going to work for me.
That's really good self-awareness. And I'm realizing that we probably shouldn't ever schedule a recording of this podcast in the morning, right? Is that what you're saying?
I'm just saying, you're going to get crusty-eyed, Candice, and I may not respond, but eventually.
Yeah. So how do you kind of tie all of those things together? Like what are the things that really, of the 6 letters, what are the things that kind of are most important to you?
So I think the most important is the P aspect, the people aspect, because there's so much of your day that's not just you. So being able to be intentional about who you spend your time with, but not just selecting all the people, because I think back to organizations, very often when we're hiring and bringing people onto our organizations, that's the biggest thing I can tell people is making sure that they're bringing in people that are going to be assets to the organization. And nobody wants to work with people that not that you don't like, but nobody wants to work with people that aren't going to be contributors. And it's because that's a very much a sink of investment dollars if you hire someone that is not going to be working out for the organization. So
surrounding yourself with the right people. And also I think to me, and this kind of segues a little bit into the things that I do for practicing self-care, setting up boundaries with people for me is really important. It's what I call compartmentalizing. And I've talked to several of the managers on my team, and when they've been struggling with an employee that's perhaps not fulfilled or not happy, and I've told them something that's kind of shocks them. I said, you are not responsible for the happiness of your employees.
Oh my.
And what I mean by that is everyone brings their drama and trauma into the workplace, right? And some of it is through no fault of their own. Some people have had like really traumatic experiences. They've had bad experiences in former jobs. They might be having struggles in their current job. We as leaders and managers in maybe a more specific sense, our job is to be empathetic. Our job is to be really good listeners and to acknowledge somebody's challenge and perhaps what they're feeling in that situation. But it is not our job to solve that problem for them. We're there to coach them. We're there to mentor them, to help them solve the problems for themselves. And so many of us, I think, will allow that problem that somebody else is having, especially if it's not a problem that you can even control in your own workplace. It might be something external. We take it on ourselves and we wear that weight for them. Compartmentalizing to me, and it's something that's incredibly important to me, because if I start taking everybody else's weight, then I can't even deal with my own. And so that's a really important thing for me.
Thanks. Are there other things that you do for self-care, Chris?
Yeah, I think it's for me, and this may be maybe not the most popular opinion.
That's okay.
But I don't believe in work-life balance.
That's okay. It was hard for me to say. So
yeah,
definitely
and it's because it creates this binary distinction between work and life that I don't think is real. I don't think it's
Yeah.
valid. I think if you're saying work isn't part of life, then what are you doing? Like
For all those hours of the day.
we spend a third of our hours, a third of our breathing hours, and half of our waking hours on average working. For me, if I wasn't doing something that I felt was meaningful in my life during that time, it would be like kind of soul crushing to think about that.
You want it to be fulfilling.
Yeah,
I really think more like work-life equilibrium. Is that?
yeah. I tend to use the word blend, but I like equilibrium, where in the pandemic, as bad as it was, really opened up this possibility for us to have that work-life blend where, in the middle of the afternoon, you may have something that's important personally to you and you can just go attend to it.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't have these like hard gates around kind of the 9 to 5. What is it, if I'm realistic, what does it mean for me to have that flexibility? It's important to me, but it also means that the second I wake up, sometime between 5:30 and 6 a.m. every morning, work is on my mind. And work is on my mind the entire day until I go to bed at 10 o'clock. Now, I'm a person that sleeps extremely well. And so my work brain just shuts off, right? My whole life brain really shuts off when I'm sleeping, which is I'm incredibly grateful for. But because I have that awareness kind of from dawn to dusk, it makes it so that I can do personal things in that whole continuum. And so my personal life can be on my mind in that entire time too. So it's just life, right? And I think that's the finding life balance is important. It's not work-life balance.
Actually the nature of how we work. So we work at an institution for higher learning. Even though we're in IT, there's some other aspects that aren't IT that it really truly is different in terms of how they work. They go to work and then they're home. They can't take construction home with them.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And so, depending on what your job is, you can do that more effectively. But I feel like putting those artificial boundaries on isn't good for my mental health. When I want to think about something, I want to think about it. So much of my job, so much of your job is actually thought.
Oh my goodness. I'm a thought worker.
Right. We are.
My mom's like, are you working? Yes. Right now?
Yeah.
Yes. I'm thinking about work at all times.
And sometimes those thoughts come to you when you're out mowing the lawn or when you're doing Taekwondo or whatever it might be. Those like, oh wait, that's the solution to our problem. And to say, okay, you have to shut off work at 5 p.m. It doesn't make any sense to me.
It doesn't. And I love that you mentioned that, because there will be opportunities after hours when I'm on campus still, let's say teaching Taekwondo or doing some dance class or something, and students will come up and they'll give feedback based on something that we actually need a student feedback on. And I go, oh my goodness, now I'm about to send you a follow-up email, like in my work capacity. So anyway.
Yeah, it's our life, and it's, living a purposeful life, both in your professional and in your personal life, is important and like good for your mental health. Okay. Another thing that I do is this idea of keeping stress appropriately scaled. And by what I mean by that is not overreacting to whatever the thing is that hits you, right? We get hit unexpectedly with things. I have a big reminder board in my office, and one of the things on that board is a phrase, breathe. It's not life or death. We're not doctors.
Some of us.
Yeah. I'm not a first responder, right? I am not dealing with anything. It's something has gone drastically wrong if I'm dealing with something that's life and death. But sometimes we act like our minds react in a way that treats the problem at hand like life and death, and it's not. And reminding yourself of that, like just earlier today, I had an employee who said something that I was like, oh, that's really frustrating. And like your blood pressure goes up, you're like, oh, I'm overreacting, right? There's no reason for me to like my body temperature to be rising because of this thing this person said. Calm down and sort of just go with the flow. And it's gonna be okay at the end of the day.
Was it a bad 5 minutes, or was it a bad 5 minutes that you milked all day?
Yes. Explain that a little bit, Candice, because I've heard you say that before, and I love the concept.
Yeah, there was that meme. Is it a bad 5 minutes, or is it a bad 5 minutes that you milked all day? And sometimes, like, it's a quick reaction. Something may happen. I may spill something on my shirt, and I'm angry. I'm frustrated. I'm like, oh no, my shirt, it's white. People are always going to say, hey, did you spill some ketchup? And I'm going to have to make the joke, I can't eat. However, if I allow it to consume my entire day, when I get home, I may be completely frustrated. My day was ruined. And my husband may go, what do you mean? I was like, oh, I spilled something on my shirt. Well, what else happened? I don't know. It was just ruined because. And so if you allow it to progress, it becomes a mood, a state. You become anxious. So allow yourself to breathe, release, and then move on.
Yeah. So you have to scale your stress, right? And another thing that's really important to me, and something that I continue to struggle with, I've certainly struggled with it earlier in my life, is just being good to my body. You know, I'm in my 50s now. Yeah. And I can't.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I made it. Yes. I can't avoid being good to my body anymore. Or maybe the other side of that is I can't be bad to my body anymore and get away with it. Mm-hmm. And the three things in that realm that are incredibly important to me is, one, getting out of my chair. It's, we're sitting here, so, we're doing this, but my body, if I'm in a chair all day, I can feel it. It aches. It bothers me. And when I'm super sensitive to how I feel physically. And if I'm off kilter, that's like, it just overtakes my brain. It's like, I don't feel good. I'm not doing anything. And that is like, it's not good for my physical health. It's not good for my mental health. So we're knowledge workers. We sit in chairs all the time. We're in meetings all of the time. And just figuring out how to be intentional about getting up, doing 2 minutes of quick yoga in your office, walk down the hall to do something. That's really important for me. The other thing is eating well, right? Yeah. And I used to think eating well was like eating really great stuff. And eating was this experiential thing. But for me at this point in my life, eating has to be more functional than it is experiential.
And that's sad.
It is sad.
Okay.
It is sad. But I think if I'm not eating well, I know it, right? I know it, whether I know it an hour later or I know it like 3 days later or 4 months later when my belt is getting a little too snug. It's just not good for me, and I need to do that. And then the last thing is staying hydrated. And this is something I was awful at. I'd be lucky if I drank 16 ounces of water in a day.
Oh my.
And I've recently learned that I need to do that. And you can see I've got my water bottle with me. It's with me everywhere I go. And it's amazing how good it makes me feel to stay hydrated. And it also gives you the extra advantage of it gets you up out of your chair because you can't stay hydrated and stay in your chair.
Yeah, those are awesome ways. Yeah.
And then the last thing that I do is being creative outdoors. You talked about Taekwondo as sort of the place where you kind of get up and be physical. I'm a big gardener, really avid gardener. I've had a couple of my gardens be featured on local garden walks. And so I'm pretty serious about this thing. But even if I wasn't like getting attention for doing it, I would do it because it's this space where I can be creative. Earlier in my career, I was a creative professional. I was a graphic designer. I was a programmer. At the end of the day, I had something tactile, tangible that I could see that I created. Yes. And now I don't. Like my team does, and I can sort of live vicariously through them. But I don't have that creative outlet. And so creating something that is beautiful for me, is beautiful for my family, is beautiful for the neighborhood, it's incredibly fulfilling for me. It resets me to be out there doing that.
Awesome. Yes. Do you have like a favorite plant? I don't know how.
That's a great question. I think it is. I'm a really big fan of daylilies. I probably have 60 or 70 different varieties of daylilies, and they're just like so bright and cheery and catch everybody's attention. So
is that horticulture? Like what is?
Yeah, horticulture would be the kind of scientific academic term. There's you can actually get a degree in horticulture here at University of Illinois. So, but I did not pursue it academically. It's just a kind of a crazy hobby for me, but it really is my physical health depends on it. But my mental health absolutely depends on it.
Definitely.
The time between like the end of October and March for me is kind of my stir crazy time because I don't have that. And my wife will often be like, you need to get outside, like go hike, go do something, because I get a little kind of stir crazy indoors.
Yeah, I can definitely tell if I'm traveling and I don't have Taekwondo and my
Yeah.
husband's like, what's going on? Because it's like that balance is total
Yeah.
mind and body unity. It's not just me moving. That's not just an outlet of like, oh,
Yeah.
I'll go do that. It's something that I've integrated into my life. So,
Yeah. So let's be real here.
Yes.
Where do you fail in these things?
Where do you still fail in self-care? So, I mean, I'll be honest, right now in DERPAT, it's really like ERPAT. Like the D in DERPAT, man, I need to focus on it a little bit more. So
Remind us what the D stands
the
for.
D stands for diet. So it's not, oh, Candice, you need to lose more weight. No, it's not. That's not the D part. I like to operate a lot after hours at night. So that's what I do, whether it be studying the language or whether it's getting some work done. That's when my brain operates. But my refrigerator is also very close to where I operate. And so I just keep making these like late night trips to do that. And in my brain, I go, oh, this is fine. You know, I used to be able to just burn off these calories immediately, and now not so much. And so I'm trying to be more intentional about the diet piece, being able to take care in terms of the food that I put in my body. And so that's something that I'm still struggling with, because now it's actually manifesting itself when I'm doing a lot more teaching. So I used to be a long distance runner. So every so often I would do like a half marathon or do something like that. And I went to go run outside, and I kid you not, after I went a mile, I said, turn around. You have lost the ability to I said, do not do this to your body. And it had to do with just the stuff that I was putting inside of my body. So
our bodies remind us, right? They scream kind of loud and clear. You're not in the place to do this right now.
I'm not 50 something, but I'm getting there. And
it's thanks for kind of showing that vulnerability there. I think it's one of the reasons why I went back to the office in the last 6 months. I was, from the beginning of the pandemic until 6 months ago, I was remote and fully remote. And one of the reasons I went back is this way too much access to food in the house. And I'm a snacker, and I just love snacking all day. And it was just not good for me.
It's when you don't have the right snacks. Like you can eat healthy snacks, but no, it was, I was making full on bowls of ramen and various stuff in the middle. It was not good.
Yeah. Oh, ramen. I wish I could eat ramen.
So let's not talk about food. Okay.
Yeah. So, my sort of
where do you still struggle?
Failure. It is definitely on the taking care of my body piece of it. And I had a wake up call this spring, so in the middle of a meeting, and looking back on it, I think it was primarily a direct result of like me not having taken care of myself that week. But I was in a meeting, and I suddenly felt this like really odd sensation of like hot water running down the back of my leg. Like, what in the world is going on? I've never felt anything like that before. I couldn't even think about like what is causing that. And it didn't stop for like an hour. I went home, I laid down, and later that night, still happening. I'm like, what is going on here? I'm like, we have to go to the ER. Like something is going, like I've got something going on. I don't know what it is, and I don't want to wait until morning. And so we went to the ER, ended up in the ER, getting a bunch of scans. Those scans turned into a cancer scare, which thankfully it's all kind of come out in the wash. I'm fine. You know, I passed all the tests with flying colors. But I was in the hospital overnight. There were, doctors who were thinking that I had like really serious advanced cancer and so on and so forth. And there was about 3 or 4 weeks where I had no idea if my future was going to be short-term or long-term and a lot of stress. Like there's that stress, plus there was a lot of stuff going on at work. And that triggered in me a recurrence of what's called Meniere's disease, which is a disease of the inner ear. The short of it is, if I don't take care of myself, I get vertigo, which is the most awful thing. You know, it's not life threatening, but it's like a very unpleasant. And I now have the motivation to eat well and stay hydrated and get out of my chair. Because if I don't, the world goes upside down on me. And so I'm glad that this may have been life's way of reminding me that you're not good at this thing. We're going to give you the motivation. So I'm in some ways grateful for it, because I'm in better shape than I was a few months ago. I'm eating a lot better. And so it's one of those things where we know we need to do all of these things. We know what's good for us, but a lot of times we don't do what's good for us until we end up with something that just kind of slaps us in the face and says, wake up and do this thing.
You talked about getting motivated and then staying motivated, which are two completely different things. But the way that you experience now that you can see, now that you're hydrated, now that you're taking care of your body, and you can see the result is, oh, I'm not experiencing the same things that I was when I wasn't. That's a good way to stay motivated.
Yeah, absolutely. So this has been a great discussion on how we practice self-care, and really encourage anybody to share with us how they practice self-care. If you want to throw it in the comments and whatever platform you're watching, listening to this on, we'd love to hear it. And we'll see you next episode.
Thanks.